Tournament arcs are a staple in the world of anime. From the World Martial Arts tournaments of Dragon Ball to the Chunin exams in Naruto, there are so many classic tournaments that help cement such an event as a staple of the shonen genre. But there's one tournament in particular that holds a special place in my heart, the Dark Tournament from Yu Yu Hakusho. Between the high stakes that set the stage, the world building, and the character development scene from Team Urameshi as they fight their way to an inevitable matchup with Team Toguro, it's top tier in my book. The Dark Tournament is often placed atop many people's list as the very best, which is why I've taken the opportunity for this to not just be another cut and dry ranking video, but also why these fights best embody each of the main characters and other characters as a whole by way of Yu Yu Hakusho's most memorable arc. Kuwabara may not be the smartest or strongest, but boy is he the heart of Team Urameshi. A mulberry is a tree and Kuwabara is a man. And what powers a man? Love, baby. Round 3 versus Team Masho has been a brutal outing. Hiei and the masked fighter are trapped inside a barrier within the medical tent and unable to participate in this round. Kurama, after winning 2 fights, is left severely beaten after his fight with Bakken. Yusuke follows it up with a victory against Bakken and another against the Windmaster Jin. But as we see throughout the tournament, the constant meddling by those higher up are able to cheat Yusuke out of a win by the committee declaring his match with Jin a draw. With Yusuke, Kurama, Hiei, and the masked fighter all unable to fight, and the tournament committee's overbearing power working against them, Yusuke and Hiei are prepared to fight every demon in the arena, with the odds of being able to win this tournament fair and square stacked against them. But then a grievously injured Kuwabara walks to the stage, ready to fight despite his bad state after his battle with Dr. Ichigaki's team in the second round. Kuwabara tells Yusuke that if he and Hiei were to start rampaging, then they'd be no better than those who are trying to cheat them out of the tournament. Kuwabara would rather die than not do things the right and honorable way. It's the final fight, and for the win, Kuwabara versus Risho. Barely able to stand without doubling over in pain, Kuwabara hobbles onto the stage. To make a dismal situation even worse, he's unable to use his spirit sword, allowing the self-assured Risho to start delivering a beatdown. And things only escalate more when Risho reveals his ability to manipulate Earth, covering his body in an armor of clay and using it to crash several times into Kuwabara with his meteor attacks. But resilient as always, Kuwabara continues to rise again and again, even though he's unable to fight back. Risho asks, "Why? Why don't you quit?" It's obvious to Kuwabara and those of us watching. Kuwabara never gives up, and of course, he has to bring victory home. And for what won't be the last time in this tournament, Kuwabara announces he's ready to give his life to ensure his friends live, giving a short touching goodbye to each of his teammates before preparing to use his remaining life energy as a last-ditch effort to come out on top. Misho begins a final meteor attack that pushes our favorite pompadoured manly man to the edge of his destruction. All seems lost until Kuwabara hears a voice from the crowd. Arriving in the nick of time, his eye catches the freshly arrived Yukino, which almost instantly provides an extra burst of strength by way of the ever-reliable power of love, reigniting and restoring Kuwabara's spirit energy. Powering up, he conjures his spirit sword and destroys Risho's armor before landing the winning blow that sends his opponent crashing into the audience. Where tragedy was certain only moments before, Kuwabara climbs back into the ring before the count runs out to earn a victory, and the round is given to Team Urameshi. Kuwabara began this tournament by being defeated by a boy with a yo-yo and had nearly sacrificed himself in order to save the members of Dr. Ichigaki's team. The win here is well deserved given such a rough start, and plainly because Kuwabara is a good guy who cares for both the members of his team and all and anyone in need of help. It's also enjoyable to watch Kuwabara be not only the comic relief, but also represent the heart and soul of this entire series. Between the bravery, the willingness to self-sacrifice, and the implausible strength that his love for Yukina provides him, it's a fight that easily defines Kuwabara as a character. Back in the first round of the tournament, the score is all tied up 1-1 with Kuwabara being defeated by the yo-yo-wielding Rinku, and Kurama overcoming the despicable Roto. Yusuke is still sound asleep, so Hiei decides to take on the presumed leader of Team Rokuyukai, Zeru. There's also an extra layer of beef involved since Zeru made a surprise appearance the night before in Team Urameshi's hotel room for some pre-match taunting, but Hiei has already figured out his opponent and his power, the ability to control heat. As the two come face to face, Zeru casually mocks Hiei's Jagan Eye, calling it a fake. In what's such a cool standoff, not much time is wasted as Zeru starts to cast flames about the arena and begins multiple fire attacks on Hiei. Hiei briefly dodges a few of them before Zeru eternally contains all of his power to become a demonic furnace, following it up with a stabbing blow through Hiei's abdomen and completely engulfing him in flames, leaving everyone in shock that Hiei would fall so easily. But it's such common deception you'd expect from the demon. Almost to prove a point that Zeru's fully powered attacks have no effect whatsoever, Hiei rises with a smile on his face and unleashes that which Zeru mocked, the Jagan Eye. He begins to build fear and panic into Zeru, telling him he should have never disrespected it, making it clear that it gives him what he needs. He starts to show off his own fire, black flames from the dragon of the darkness flame in this incredible build-up scene. The crowd along with Zeru look on in horror. Hiei only fuels more anxiety into his opponent by saying that he can't control the dragon, so not even he can say what damage it will cause to Zeru, those present, or even himself. It's peak Hiei, anti-hero to the core, reckless and cocky as hell. Fearless to a fault, Hiei has completed a 180, from initially staying reserved in the beginning of the fight, only to return the intimidation tenfold back to Zeru with his own brand of fear and scourge. Once the dragon finally emerges from his arm, it viciously swallows Zeru whole, leaving nothing but a charred cinder against the wall. It's quick, dirty, and incredibly destructive, much like Hiei. Long fights that build up over time are great, but sometimes complete domination is the better spectacle, and who better to have this spotlight than a character like Hiei? At least on the surface, he's a character that's cold, selfish, and doesn't hold back. You could easily write this fight off as your typical overpowering of an overconfident opponent, but there's still substance there, unlike Hiei's later fight against Makintaro. We quickly learn how much stronger Hiei has gotten since we first met him as an antagonist in the Spirit Detective arc. But at the same time, it also shows how he still has to grow as a warrior, considering the reckless damage the dragon leaves on his right arm. Most of all, even though we eventually come to know for certain that Hiei is one of the good guys, it's a fight like this that reminds you Hiei is allegiant to himself first and foremost. He concerns Kuwabara for a moment, but reassures him his loyalty is with Team Urameshi. But it's typical for Hiei to keep everyone guessing if he's truly on anyone's side barring his own, friends and enemies alike. With the final round upon us, it's Team Toguro versus Team Urameshi, the matchups we've been waiting for this entire time, beginning with Kurama and Karasu. Leaving Kurama dumbfounded with his speed and reflexes prior to the finals, the task is tall and possibly even personal for Kurama. As he looks down on him from atop the ring before the fight starts, Karasu issues a one-word statement: bang. Kurama has come prepared, however. Another contestant, Suzuki, provides him with a potion beforehand that will conveniently allow him to turn into the King of Thieves, Yoko Kurama. But he must survive long enough in his human form to allow the transformation to take place, giving him 15 minutes in his Yoko form to get the job done. Karasu has a vampiric quality to him. He's tall and slender and extremely sadistic. He has a certain infatuation with Kurama's beauty and relishes in killing the things he loves the most, putting Kurama in an uncomfortable position against an opponent that not only wants to defeat him, but will also take great pleasure in torturing him while doing so. Their battle begins. Kurama knows he stands no chance in his human form. He uses his intelligence to stall as he surrounds Karasu with razor blade sharp rose petals, but Karasu clears them with ease through the use of demonic bombs he can manifest through his thoughts and energy. And once Karasu gains the upper hand over Kurama for what looks like will be the end, a familiar cloud of white smoke appears, signaling the potion has finally taken effect. The outline of Yoko Kurama appears, and the playing field is even. Yoko Kurama is still so much of what we know about Kurama. He's intelligent, confident, and strong, but lacks a certain compassion Kurama has. Or perhaps it's just his ruthlessness is more dialed up. Either way, defeating Karasu is not an option for Yoko, only death. He uses Karasu's strategy against him by summoning an Ojigi plant to pursue Karasu. It's also worth mentioning the overall horror aesthetic to the fight, with the cool, nightmarish look of the Ojigi and the gothic take on Karasu's look and various designs of his bombs. Karasu tries to ward off the plant's attack by hurling bomb after bomb at it, but the Ojigi finally wraps itself around its target. The plant begins to cocoon itself around Karasu tightly, and Yoko Kurama returns the same line from the beginning back to him. Bang. Yoko turns for his exit, but it's yet another classic death fake-out. Karasu emerges from the Ojigi. With his mask gone, his true energy is released, turning his hair a fierce blonde. He unleashes an attack on Kurama that leaves the stadium in tatters and many demons dead in the process. And to only make things more dire, Kurama reverts back to his human form earlier than expected, leaving him vulnerable. He quickly goes on the offensive and seemingly tries to replicate an earlier victory by planting a seed in Karasu's chest. But Karasu is able to catch the seed before it's buried into him, thwarting Kurama's presumed plan. Karasu then unleashes his perverse sadism onto Kurama, exploding bombs off one by one to leave him a bloodied, suffering mess on the floor. In one last desperate attempt, Kurama decides to summon a final plant in exchange for his life. Using his remaining life energy to bring this fight to a close, he summons the Ojigi once more, and the plants are drawn to the wound opening Kurama strategically made using the Death Seed attack, revealing the true purpose for the earlier attempt, and piercing Karasu's chest before it envelops him whole. The crowd and both teams are left in silence at the outcome. But then Kurama is surprised to find himself alive and well. He realizes that every time he transforms into Yoko, he retains more of that form, which is what allowed him to summon the Ojigi once again. The episode ends on this beautiful shot of a rose bloom from what remains of Karasu. It's another great gothic-like horror shot, capturing the sadistic nature of Karasu overcome and defeated by the beauty he coveted so much in Kurama. This fight gives us a little bit of everything Kurama. His past and the relationship he has with his Yoko alter ego, as well as his strongest attribute, his intelligence. Knowing he must transform into Yoko to prevail, he smartly preps before the fight by experimenting with the potion to ascertain the timing to know how long he has before becoming the fox. He plays the waiting game smartly as well, testing his plants until his transformation takes hold, displaying his expansive knowledge of them and the know-how of their uses and their different utilizations. Like how the Death Seed was not initially used to destroy his opponent, but rather used to leave an X marks the spot for the plants to finish off Karasu. Compared to his vastly different demon counterpart Hiei, Kurama's ruthlessness is still often on par with Hiei's. For how showy and chaotic Hiei is, Kurama is way more subdued and actually more gruesome in his attacks. As exemplified in this battle, the quiet mysteriousness mixed with all the characteristics that highlight his brutality, intelligence, and sacrifice is very much in the vein of everything Kurama. In the first round, our hero finally awakens to take on his first tournament fight with the true leader of Team Rokayukai, the drunken Mad Max lookalike demon, Chu. Team Urameshi is up 2-1, but that doesn't mean they can rest on their laurels. Chu emerges from the tunnel, killing his fleeing teammates for their cowardice, before drunkenly stepping into the ring and waking Yusuke with the smell of alcohol. Chu may appear to be nothing but an idiotic alcoholic, but looks can be deceiving. Chu is the last man standing for his team as an alternate, but he's the last line of defense for a reason. As intoxicated as he may be, his cheeky personality is a perfect match for someone like Yusuke to square off against, as the two smile and stare each other down. You don't sense any animosity, but more so an unspoken kinship building between one another. Chizuru watches on and senses some dormant energy in Chu, knowing he mustn't be underestimated. Chu tells Yusuke he's earned quite the reputation, but then dismisses it as him just being lucky. Then with his stumbling quick movements, Chu immediately lands 5 punches in what seems like one on Yusuke. But he doesn't stay down for long, assuring us he's grown strong enough to go the distance in this tournament. It's only just begun, Yusuke says, and we believe him. This fight stays light on spirit powers, wits, and villainous subplots. Instead, it gives us pure brute force between the chummy pair of Yusuke and Chu. As he gets more drunk, Chu's skills only improve. He knocks Yusuke down again, but the hero is only getting warmed up. It's clear that the two combatants are really enjoying themselves. Yusuke decides to show off his improved spirit gun that can now be fired multiple times a day as he casually blows a hole in the stadium. Chu decides to tap into his own spirit power by drinking the strongest booze out there, Ogre Killer, enveloping the entire stadium in his aura. We then discover the drink isn't the power, but rather it's what the drink brings out of Chu. Yusuke's excited for this upgrade as both fighters pit their energies against each other. Everything becomes pure offense and defense is thrown out the window as they exchange a barrage of punches. Chu is able to get a huge energy blast off, but Yusuke counters it with a double spirit gun, with both waves of energy knocking them down. They start maniacally laughing with each other as both realize they've drained themselves of their spirit power completely. With no more fancy energy techniques to show off, Chu pulls out 2 knives and tells Yusuke they should settle this with a knife-edge death match. Stabbing the knives in the ground, each fighter places a shoeless heel in front of the knife. Within the close proximity, neither can step outside of the line made by the knives in what will be hand-to-hand combat. The winner is the last man standing. After receiving the tournament's approval, a storm rolls in and a dual lightning strike hits the stage. Their eyes stay fixated on one another, and then the brawl begins. Each go blow for blow without taking a single step backwards, their feet bleeding from pressing into the knives. It has all the brawn you'd expect from a Yusuke fight, and it's great to see an opponent that savors it as much as he does. Kuwabara says he envies them, how the focus and pain is all that exists between them. Chu and Yusuke keep fighting and laughing, but as the two meet with a headbutt, lightning crashes once again, and Chu falls to the floor with Yusuke's hard head proving to be the deciding factor. When Chu comes to, he asks Yusuke to finish him to honor the rules of the deathmatch. But Yusuke blows off the idea and says they'll just have to fight again later, and a true friendship is born. The crowd boos for Urameshi to finish him, but Yusuke tells the crowd to shut it. It's classic fearless Yusuke, ready to face down everyone if that's what it takes. And that is exactly what he's up against. He has no favor with the audience or the committee, a long arduous road filled with strong demon opponents, and an emotional and mental obstacle greater than everything else. He finds Toguro in the crowd, his real opponent, and for now he only delivers a middle finger in typical Urameshi fashion. But still, Yusuke's entrance has proven to be a memorable start. Yusuke broke his long slumber for a fight that did not disappoint. We're given a peek at how much he's improved since his extensive training with Genkai, and it was done in a satisfyingly brutal and purely offensive bout. It's a battle like this that reminds you, even with its special techniques and large power-ups, it's still a fighting series that often calls back to Yusuke's brawling days at school with Kuwabara, despite the incredible levels of strength he's achieved since. And for what will be a tournament that will deliver many consequences, sacrifices, and a major step in the hero's journey for Yusuke, it's great to get a fight that feels purely fun, a lot like Urameshi's personality in general, especially with someone as beloved as Chu. This was the only way it could end. This matchup is something of its own mini essay that has to cover several parts to better enhance the understanding of why it's so meaningful and why this is the fight the Dark Tournament was held for. And everything begins with Genkai's death. The meeting between Toguro and Genkai is the necessary catalyst both know they must take to bring out Yusuke's true power. Toguro wants someone to best him, and Genkai understands the stakes better than anyone, having watched him sell his soul to attain eternal youth and a body with unlimited power. She must do everything to help Yusuke understand why he must fight and for whom he should fight so that he can overcome the emotional barrier that holds him back. Though Yusuke comes to somewhat admire Toguro, becoming someone like him is not the path, but rather he can become better by defeating Toguro for the right reasons. There's a little glimmer of someone in Toguro that Genkai used to love. She had promised she would come back and save him from his madness, but now it's too late. Powering up to 80%, he takes her life. Yusuke arrives as soon as she falls, but she assures him with her dying breath that this was fate. She tells him Toguro ran away from the fight against time, but no one is a one-man show. You can't be a cocky kid anymore. It's the first step Yusuke must take to understand that he's simply not a street fighting punk any longer, but someone with immense responsibility. Someone that has to fight for something bigger than himself, and more importantly, for those he loves. Toguro rubs salt in the wound by telling Yusuke, "You either die or get stronger," before pummeling him with a one-shot knockout. Their battle has been ongoing in some form or another for the entire tournament, psychologically and now physically. But it's all been a primer for the final matchup. Aware that he always has one foot out the door in case things go wrong, Yusuke knows he has to somehow give it his all. And so the day of the final match arrives. Immediately, Toguro powers up to 80% of his power, disintegrating demons in the crowd. Though the aura of strength is hard on everyone, including Team Urameshi, Yusuke is surprised by his own sense of calmness. He begins with a charge, trading blows with the demon. Toguro urges Yusuke to show him the power Genkai gave to him. In stoic fashion, Yusuke faces him down and begins to power up his spirit gun. But it's only a tease. He lowers his guard and swiftly charges with more punches. He's able to nimbly avoid Togoro's destructive swings, but we quickly find out it was all a diversion to set up the perfect spirit gun to catch Toguro off guard, giving us a glimpse of Yusuke's improved intelligence. Yusuke blasts Toguro out of the stadium, obliterating the ring in the process. But it's not over, and Yusuke knows it. Toguro marches through the flames of the forest unscathed, and once again questions if that's all there is to Yusuke's power. Toguro decides Yusuke isn't worth 100%, and chooses to finish him off at 80% instead. But Urameshi finally decides that playtime is over and reveals his spirit cuffs, yet another gift from Genkai. The cuffs act as weights on the body, forcing the user to cycle spirit energy to perform basic tasks. As he unlocks them, a buildup of that spirit energy over the span of the tournament is released in the shape of a phoenix. This time the punches do work, bringing Toguro to the ground. Though it looks as though things have become more even, Yusuke catches a glare in Togoro's eye, then panics and backs off. He can tell that Toguro is still in control. The demon reverts back to his base form, and everything is left in silence for a moment. Yusuke has finally proved himself worthy, and Toguro knows he can now maximize his power. As he starts to ascend, large swaths of the crowd are annihilated by his energy alone. The stadium gets shrouded in darkness, and Toguro undergoes a terrifying body horror-like transformation. Even Yusuke is left awestruck, and he's now reached the point of no return, needing to see everything Togoro's got. Yusuke's spirit gun no longer has any effect whatsoever. Toguro tells him he lacks what makes him strong, which is fear. Still, Toguro challenges him for more. He knows there's still a side Yusuke hasn't unlocked. Toguro starts sucking in the souls of demons to fuel himself more, attempting to push Yusuke to the edge to tap into his power in order to save everyone. Sakyo traps all the demons who try to escape, only cornering Yusuke even further to find a way to defeat the monster. After throwing a series of ineffective punches out of pure desperation, Yusuke finally starts to feel the gravity of the situation. From the crowd, Keiko starts to dream about being back in school with Yusuke. When life was nothing but boring and normal, she can only sum up what's happening as a bad dream. Yusuke starts to think back too on his memories with Keiko, but then the figure of Toguro grabs her. He's starting to realize and feel the risk that others will be at if he doesn't win. He has to find a way to become more than what he is. Keiko is someone that represents the past and future for Yusuke, and though he's just on the verge, he still remains too emotionally withdrawn to leave it all out in the ring. So Genkai possesses Poo's body to give Yusuke one last fighting chance. She informs Toguro that he must kill someone Yusuke loves to unlock the power he seeks. She knows there's a 6-foot wall of crap between Yusuke and his true emotions, and that is where his true power resides. Genkai doesn't do this out of cruelty. She knows Toguro has to be stopped or everyone will die. It's one friend versus all of them. So Toguro points out his target, Kuwabara. Yusuke tries desperately to stop him as he walks towards his friend, but Toguro swats him away like a fly. He tells Yusuke this is his fault, and his helplessness only sinks in more and more. But in classic Kuwabara fashion, he stands tall against the approaching Toguro. He draws his spirit sword to face him in one of his finest moments. We all have to die when our time comes, but if we do our duty, we don't got regrets. But all it takes is one pierce of the heart, and Kuwabara falls to the ground seemingly dead. With his teacher and friend now gone, Yusuke is filled with a shock too great. But it's enough to finally bring the walls down, and so his power finally emerges. Toguro relishes in the moment. He's waited 50 long years to feel fear again, building his excitement for what's to come. He lands one punch, but knows it has no effect on Yusuke. Their powers begin to mix together throughout the stadium, and Toguro urges Yusuke to only think of himself. Believe only in your strength and it can never let you down. But Yusuke rejects this. He refuses to throw people away, because without his friends, he would have never gotten this far. Though he had come to respect Toguro in a male authority figure kind of way, he sees now what Genkai was trying to tell him. Yusuke has learned the value of that which Toguro gave away, and now it was time to finish this for good. After landing several effective blows, Yusuke calls his shot on Toguro. He tells him to get up so he can deliver one more attack. Everything will be given. So Toguro takes his power to its true 100% potential. Both men readied themselves to put their entire lives on the line for the next move. Yusuke is no longer concerned whether he lives or dies, just as long as he saves his friends by beating Toguro. He charges up his last spirit gun and releases it. Toguro pushes ahead against the blast but barely holds it back. Unable to release himself from it, blood begins to violently spurt from his body, the same body he wished for. A horrific sight of a man who abandoned everything in the pursuit of something always greater, all for nothing more than the sake of this moment. Toguro eventually smashes the blast and Yusuke, now out of power, passes out. But the former human can only take a few steps before his skin and muscles crack and tear away from the strain. With a smile, Toguro thanks Yusuke for letting it end this way, before he collapses and turns into a decaying shell from what was only shortly before the definition of absolute power and dominance. With nowhere for his power to climb any further, Toguro's journey has finally come to a close. Yusuke then manages to stand up long enough to claim victory for his team. There's some consolation to Yusuke's win in that Toguro missed Kuwabara's heart, and though he found a way to become more than what he was, later the old Urameshi kicks back in when he blows off the idea of talking to Genkai, burying his emotions all over again. But Yusuke Urameshi is a stubborn, hard-headed, repressed, yet loving individual. Brash and overconfident, there are a lot of traits that don't line up with that of a true hero or leader. However, that gray, uneven morality makes for a more interesting character overall. Toguro's character was meant to represent how fragile Yusuke's ego could be if he never kept himself in check, with his tendencies and emotional withdrawnness being primed to lead him on a more selfish, villain-like path. But through Genkai's endless efforts, Yusuke ends up choosing to use his abilities responsibly, to fight for those he loves, and to exemplify that through vulnerable action that actually made him stronger by the conclusion of this tournament. It's not a perfect transformation of a heroic character, but Yusuke somehow manages to be a perfectly imperfect hero. Toguro's character proves to be more enigmatic in the end, giving us no true resolution to what caused his actions. He gave up his humanity to remain young and strong forever, but why? Did he simply fear death and being weak? Was never being vulnerable again a way to atone for his student's death at the hands of the demon Chiron? By killing Genkai, he removed the final bit of his humanity remaining within him, to prove he chose the right path versus her. Yet he desired nothing more than to be defeated by her pupil. For someone who craved and admired his own strength, he still desired death in mortal and honorable combat at the hands of not a demon, but by a worthy human. Koenma ponders about what he truly feels as he marches off to spend 10,000 years by his own choosing in the worst suffering in limbo. Ultimately though, Koenma settles on Toguro being a normal man with a wounded heart and a broken dream. Before the gates of limbo, a younger Genkai awaits him. Tying it all back to fate, she tells him she knew all along that this is how it would end. She asks him, "Haven't you blamed yourself enough for not being perfect?" But Toguro assures her he loved the strength he attained, That alone drove him more than making up for Kairen killing his students. Ginkai responds like with Yusuke, trying to break down his walls by calling him a liar, but Toguro remains steadfast and quiet about his choices. Perhaps he's lying, and perhaps he's not. Ginkai even realizes that Toguro strangely cares for Yusuke. He no doubt admired the kid's strength and potential, but he also represented for Toguro the path of a young human that could live the life that he could have had. Toguro smiles and walks off, confirming this thought by telling Ginkai regarding their potential lives together. It would have been a beautiful life. Per Toguro's arrangement with Koenma, Ginkai's life is restored. She goes back to the human world to continue training Yusuke to not only be stronger, but a better person overall. The Dark Tournament proved to be more than a competition, but more a major trial for Yusuke, to understand the meaning of sacrifice, responsibility, and how to truly fight for something bigger than yourself. In the end, Yusuke overcame his biggest threat by sticking together with his friends. And though each of these battles captured the best parts of each individual character, the victory was earned by Team Urameshi as a whole, with Ginkai's words never ringing more true. No one is a one-man show.